Hey guys, meteorologist Chris Tomer here. We're going to talk about the winter forecast, what I think is going to happen, the pattern, all that good stuff. And this is specifically for On the Snow. And don't forget to subscribe so you get notified when the latest updates come out here on the Snow. So here are my bullet points. We'll start out with the big picture. We are officially on a La Nina watch, like 70% chance or greater of seeing a La Nina this fall. That definitely plays into my forecast. I think what we're going to see with that watch is a La Nina for most of the fall season, and then we'll transition to neutral by the time we get into the winter. So what does that actually mean? Well, La Nina, cooler than normal waters, South Pacific, near the equator. El Nino, just the opposite, warmer than normal. And if you're in a neutral phase, the water is right around where it should be as far as water temperatures go. Last winter, we were at about minus zero point 0.6 the bulk of the time, or that's where we bottomed out. This winter, I think we could be up or down to minus zero point 0.5, so cooler than normal water by about 0.5 degrees Celsius. So at times, this winter may very well look a lot and feel like last winter, but not the entire time. I think that we could briefly go colder. Some of the latest data is showing that we might actually tip the scales a little closer to minus 1 Celsius for a very short time. If that happens, that definitely has an impact on the winter, and you're talking about La Nina for sure. And my feeling is there are a lot of different variables to look at that control little things in the atmosphere. But I think whether or not you're in a La Nina or El Nino or neutral really does help to anchor the wintertime jet stream across a lot of North America. And so that's why it's so valuable. Overall, the winter is going to favor the northern tier of states, the Pacific Northwest, BC, parts of Montana, parts of Idaho, parts of Wyoming, parts of northern Utah, parts of northwest Colorado. I think those are really a lot of the key areas. Some other things to watch: atmospheric rivers. Yeah, we could see a couple of those. This is not the prime type of setup for that, but at times we may have dual jet influence. In other words, the northern branch will be the dominant player, the northern jet, the polar jet. But at times the southern branch will come in and feed some extra moisture in, and if the two of those merge, that could be a very interesting setup across the west. When you look at the fall, I think October, November really favors the Pacific Northwest for best precipitation, best chances, best likelihood, consistency. And then December may very well favor the Sierra as kind of a lowering of the jet off the Pacific, might be able to feed some extra moisture into that area. And then once we get into winter, the overall pattern will favor the northern tier. Some of this type of pattern that you tend to get with the northern branch can crank out several of these strong northwest flow patterns, which can be very good for parts of the Tetons, the Wind Rivers, parts of northern Utah, and parts of northwest Colorado. So that is absolutely something to watch. All right, so this is a sort of a consensus run, if you will, of a bunch of different models. And you can see what they do here. These are water temperatures in the key region of the South Pacific near the equator. When you go down like this, that means cooler than normal water. This is showing a La Nina. That's exactly what it's showing right now. So these are cooler than normal waters, and you can see that it takes it all the way down between minus 0.5 and minus 1. So somewhere in that zone. That's a pretty good dip. It's only for a short time, like October to maybe December, somewhere right in there, but that's enough to control the wintertime jet stream. It's a multi-model ensemble, if you really want to know what this is, that NMME, multi-model ensemble. Now, this is the European. This is its water temperature forecast for November. Look at this. South Pacific near the equator, key region, cooler than normal water. And in fact, this drops, look at some of those deeper blues, drops it close to minus 1 in November. So that's also leaning in that direction that I like for this forecast. Here's December. Same type of thing. Look at the blues. Now this is probably minus 0.5 at its deepest. So it's potentially, it dips briefly to maybe minus 0.5 to minus 1, and then it kind of comes back, and then we go to neutral or normal most of the winter months. This is another model. Actually, this is the same, the NMME forecast, just looking at it as a graphical version. Look what it does. This has a really deep area of blue here. I mean, that's easily -1 down here on the scale. So it definitely thinks we're headed for La Nina at least. And this is October, November, December. So those are the months that it thinks that's going to be a player. Now, the other thing to note is all this warm water, warmer than normal water up here in the North Pacific. That will have some say in parts of the jet stream forecast. Sometimes that creates a little bit of a ridge here over parts of the Pacific Northwest. I think that will probably be the case at some points during the winter. So we'll have to see how consistently that happens. Okay, let me see. Let me take you to what this pattern will actually look like. Surface features. La Nina U.S. impact. So there's your cooler than normal water. Typically what that will do, you'll get a dip in the jet here over Hawaii, and then you'll get some of that. And this is why this can be a force to be reckoned with as far as the atmospheric river, because you already dipped the jet over Hawaii. So you're potentially bringing some of that in on the southern branch if you get the right setup. That's an atmospheric river setup, Pineapple Express. But this is the area to watch up here in green over the northern Rockies, northern tier, BC. That's the area that I think will get the most consistent wintertime precipitation, because the dominant player is going to be this polar jet that comes down right here, and that's what's going to steer the action across a lot of the west. All right, here's my forecast. This is what I think will happen during the winter, the overall pattern. This is the northern branch of the jet, so this is generally where it's going to be running. And if that's the case, then that puts the area of most consistent precipitation right here in this green shaded area. That's where I think we'll see the most consistent, whether it's rain, snow, both, whatever. And you can see that covers a lot of major ski areas, a lot of big mountains across the west. Now, if you're south of this, especially southern Colorado, southern Utah, parts of Nevada, southern California, New Mexico, Arizona, that to me is looking drier than normal in that area. Now let's get specific. Here's my forecast for the ski areas of the west, and I went with these colored balls. I've done this in the past. It makes it easy. It's very easy to conceptualize here. The green balls above normal winter precipitation. Yellow is normal. And then red would be drier than normal conditions for this winter. And again, that's all winter. And so what do you got? Well, you've got that area that I outlined in green. That's where we're going to see the most consistent snowfall right here. Most consistent precipitation right there. So find your resort that the Tetons are included. You know, and I debated on whether to include all of the Wasatch, but I said, you know what, let's just include the entire Wasatch. I think it's very possible that if we get enough of these northwest flows, that'd be a big deal, and that'll keep the wintertime precipitation to at least normal, if not slightly above normal. So that's why that area is in green. In northwest Colorado, you can see I've got some green right there near Steamboat, the flat tops around Aspen Snowmass, and maybe close to Vail. Again, it depends how many of these northwest flow events that we get, but Aspen Snowmass was right on the line, so I tilted a little bit in the positive direction, but you can see that a lot of the major resorts along I-70 are going to be normal, and then it's drier than normal in southern Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, southern Utah. Telluride's normal, Silverton's normal, Monarch's normal, Breck, all those big resorts are normal there. A little bit drier than normal across Mammoth down to Big Bear, Mount Whitney. Pretty normal around Heavenly, Lake Tahoe, up to Shasta, I think, especially if we can pull off a couple atmospheric rivers. That'll help to really even the score on this. Looking pretty normal in Oregon, and then pretty good up here, especially in the parts of BC. And then Alberta, Sunshine Village, up to Marmot Basin, pretty normal right there. So let's go and really do a close-up here, zoom in, of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Colorado. It's just what we talked about. And notice these insets, because I couldn't put on all of the resorts. There's just too many. But they're all included here, and you can see what I'm thinking for those. So places like Ski Irwin, normal winter, Aspen, maybe slightly above. Copper normal, Keystone normal, Lake Ski Granby there normal, Eldora normal. Over here in Utah, Powder Mountain a little bit above. Same for Deer Valley, Solitude, Brighton, Snowbird, Alta, Kings Peak, Park City, Snow Basin, all looking good. Hagedon's normal, Bridger Bowl's normal, Discovery normal, Sun Valley probably slightly above. I don't want to forget about the east, the northeast. Here's what I'm thinking. I think there will be 3 target areas for above normal snowfall right here. Stowe, Jay Peak, and also Sugarloaf. But all the other resorts should at least end up close to normal. At times, I think it's going to be a pretty generous flow. But I think when you really average everything out by the end of the winter, probably average, probably normal for most ski areas there, slightly above in the northern tier. So we'll end on the big western map here, guys. That is my winter forecast. Again, this is going to be your key flow right down through here for most of the winter. Not all winter, but when you average things out, that's probably where most of it is going to happen. So there you go. Always appreciate you guys tuning in on these updates. Again, this is for On the Snow, and this is the winter forecast.